When the new Alpha told us to kneel, the room obeyed. I didn't. The assembly hall wasn't built for quiet, but it found some anyway. Light poured through the high windows like water, pale and clean, pooling on polished wood. The walls were old pine and newer steel, tradition bolted to function. The air was a living thing. Sap, varnish, metal, and the pack's pheromones unfurling in bright aggressive blooms. If scent had a color, the room would have been stained glass. He walked in, and the temperature dropped 3 degrees. I'd seen pictures. They don't capture scale. Tarian wasn't merely tall, he had the sort of stillness city statues try to imitate. Winter in a suit. Hair the color of iron shavings. A mouth that looked like it had kissed Mercy once, and decided against a second date. 2 steps into the hall and everyone's breath hitched. 3 steps and spines folded. You didn't need to be told he was Alpha. The air announced it for him. Kneel, he said, and the word traveled through the pack like a command, remembered from childhood, automatic, bone deep, irresistible. Bodies lowered. Heads tilted. Necks bared. Except mine. I stayed seated, pen balanced across my knuckles, the ledger I'd been correcting open on my lap like nothing historic was happening. The pen wobbled, tattling on my pulse. I told my hand to behave. Someone to my left breathed. Marlowe. The way people say don't. No, I said. It wasn't loud. The syllable just didn't make room for anything else. A beat later, silence found us with both hands. The scents in the room hiccuped, as if the whole place had been holding a note and forgot the next one. Tarian turned. Not the scan he'd given the room when he'd come in, weighing us like terrain. He turned and looked at me the way a person does when the chessboard does something it shouldn't. Measuring, recalculating. The thing about being scentless, I don't transmit. My body kept the glands, skipped the signal. I feel hunger, heat, fear. Of course I do, but I don't leak it into the air, and I don't read it there either. So when the Alpha's attention slammed into the room, stiffening backs and making Omega's hands hover over their throats, it met me like weather against glass. He breathed in. Nothing. He tried again, as if the first inhale had been a faulty instrument reading. Nothing, still. His eyes narrowed by a fraction. The space between my shoulder blades warmed like a struck match. Stand, he said. The room braced for the sound of me obeying. No, I said again, and watched a single clean line of surprise cut through his composure, brief as lightning, and just as bright. My sister, somewhere behind me, made a noise like she was grinding her teeth against prayer. Rhea's a wall built out of willpower and sharp elbows. If she'd been closer, she would have picked me up by the back of my shirt just to save my life from my mouth. Tarian didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. Name. Marlowe Vins, I said, setting the pen down because I was either going to fidget it into flight or stab myself with it. Omega. Defective model. I smiled without showing teeth. The warranty's a little complicated. A ripple went through the room. Shock, scandal, a murmur of what if the floor opens right now and swallows him. His jaw didn't move, but the air did. A press, not a push. The kind of pressure alphas exhale when they want a shape to happen in the world, and the world usually cooperates. I let it hit and pass. If scent is a river, I'm the rock under it. Wetted, not moved. The sensation skimmed over my skin and went looking for someone more accommodating. 6 people gasped, and one chair leg scraped like a flinch across the floorboards. Tarian's gaze weighed me. Marlowe Vins, he said, trying my name on like armor. Stand up, please. The please didn't sound like surrender. It sounded like accuracy. He'd asked me to kneel before. He'd asked the room to kneel. Now he was asking me. Small difference. Big canyon. I stood. My knees weren't shaking. My insides were doing an elaborate interpretive dance that probably meant "Are you kidding me?" But from the outside I was all cool lines and still hands. Fake it until your fear gets bored and leaves. Thank you, he said, as if we'd negotiated a treaty and I'd signed. He looked at my throat, at the space where scent would gather in the hollow. A visible echo of a thing I didn't have. And then back at my face. Do you know who I am? The new Alpha, I said. Imported weather system. I'm told you came with excellent references. A pulse of laughter tried to escape the pack, and then remembered it wasn't allowed. Rhea's inhalation cut the air like a blade. Somewhere, a beta coughed their soul back into their body. He was closer now, not looming, just near. His presence didn't smell like anything to me, but I could feel it, a gravity increase, a rich, low frequency in the bones. "You didn't obey," he said mildly. "I didn't agree," I said. "Not the same thing. You don't scent." It wasn't a question, not rumor either. Observation. He'd inhaled and found a blank where the rest of the world wrote in marker. "I don't," I said. "Saves on cologne. And you're an omega? So the paperwork claims." The corner of his mouth almost moved. "You'll explain that later," I said, "preferably over coffee. Or, do alphas drink something more dramatic? Melted snow from a mountaintop?" Something like interest, cool and precise, glinted in his eyes. He turned slightly, and the room remembered to breathe, the scents reblooming, clove and cedar, honey and smoke, 1,000 invisible flags unfurling to remind each other who they were. "Welcome to the Vesper Pack," he said to everyone, without taking his attention off me. "Please, rise." Bodies lifted around us, relief jangling off metal chair legs. The meeting moved on. Introductions, logistics, promises, dressed in strategy. I stood with the ledger held like armor and watched him work. He was not kind. He was not cruel. He was exacting. He laid out goals and timelines, as if mapping a wild animal's migration, factual, inevitable, unafraid of distance. When his gaze found me again, it wasn't an accident. He dismissed the room with a nod sharp enough to cut rope. The pack scattered like birds. Rhea appeared at my elbow so fast it counted as teleportation. "What?" she hissed without moving her lips. "Are you doing?" "Breathing," I said. "Bad habit, I know. Marlowe." "I didn't kneel," I said. "I stood." My smile felt like a bruise. "There's a difference." She stared at me, all iron and smoke. Beneath the armor, worry knocked. "You think he won't break you?" "I think he doesn't know how," I said. Softer than I meant to. "I think that's what bothers him." Rhea's eyes flicked to where the alpha stood, speaking to a knot of advisors. "Then, stay out of his teeth." "Sure," I said. "I'll just keep my hand out of the tiger's mouth." "Easy." Her hand squeezed my shoulder hard enough to leave fingerprints on bone. "I'm serious." "So am I." When she left, dragged away by duty and the urge to throttle someone else, I tucked the ledger under my arm and looked up. Tarian was watching me again. Not the way alphas watch omegas, checking a box labeled mine, maybe not mine. He watched like I was a locked door in a house he'd just bought. He started toward me. Inside my ribs, a small thing curled awake. Not fear. Not exactly. Anticipation's stranger cousin. I straightened. If this was a test, I had already decided the answer. "Omega," he said when he reached conversational distance. "Alpha," I said, "because manners are free." He studied me, breath even. Up close, the winter impression sharpened. Clean lines, absolute edges. "Why didn't you kneel?" "Because I don't kneel to the weather," I said. "And because if you want me down, you can ask." His eyes did that narrowing thing again, microclimate shifting. After a heartbeat, he nodded. "Marlowe Vins," he said. "We'll speak." "Ask nicely," I said, and the corner of his mouth, this time, really moved. He left me with the sound of chairs, the rub of wood against stone, the smell of the pack returning to its lives. I stood in the absence of scent, in the center of a room that had learned the shape of my no, and pretended my hands weren't trembling. It's a skill. It's also a choice. And choice, for me, has always been the only thing that smells like freedom. The lab always smelled like ambition set on fire. Sharp lemon from cleaning agents, too much sugar from Emery's stabilizers, and something scorched that probably used to be ginger before it gave its life in the name of science. The scent clung to the back of the throat. Most Omegas' spaces smell like warmth, like nesting. Emery's smelled like an explosion in a candy store. He stood hunched over the central table, dark curls springing every which way despite the elastic meant to tame them. Safety goggles pushed up on his forehead like a permanent crown. His hands moved quick and careless, spinning a glass vial between fingers, with the faith of someone who believed glass never broke in his grasp. "You're just in time," Emery said when I stepped in. His grin lit up his face like a match. "Marlowe, this is it, batch 6, the one. I can feel it. I can smell it," I muttered, wrinkling my nose. "And it feels like melted candy with a side of bad decisions. Progress has an aroma." Emery spun, thrusting the vial toward me like it was holy water. The liquid inside shimmered faintly pink, catching the fluorescent light. Artificial resonance, custom, tailored, a scent signature designed to match your DNA markers. Once metabolized, it broadcasts. Your body will believe it's yours. Everyone else will too. My chest squeezed. Hope's an ugly thing when you don't invite it. "You're telling me you bottled normal?" "I bottled you," Emery corrected softly. His enthusiasm never cracked. But under it was a kind of fierce kindness. "The way you should have been. I want you to have the choice, Marlowe, to stop being," he faltered, "treated like broken machinery." I sighed, dropping into the nearest stool. "You know what I hate most about this? Everyone keeps using the word broken like it's polite, as if they're not calling me useless to my face." Emery set the vial down carefully, as if it were a sleeping infant. "Then let me fix it. Let me fix what they see. What you feel. I'm not broken, Emery." My voice came out sharper than intended. I forced a laugh over it, brittle as cracked glass. "I'm just built differently. Ask the factory for a refund." He bit his lip, hands restless on the table. His eyes carried that stubborn glow, the one that said, "His dreams outran every wall." "But don't you ever wonder? Don't you want to feel the pull? To know what it's like when an alpha looks at you and knows?" Before I could answer, the door opened with a hiss, and in walked Order itself, Silas. The beta medic's uniform was pressed sharp enough to cut, his posture military, straight, not a wrinkle out of place. His scent bitter herbs, clean antiseptic, cut through Emery's sugar, burn haze like a scythe through weeds. He closed the door behind him with the kind of precision that told you he always did. "Still playing with fire, Emery?" Silas's tone was clipped, clinical. His eyes flicked to me, like a diagnosis he'd already written. "And letting Marlowe near it?" "Of course. Research," Emery shot back, not missing a beat. "You wouldn't understand." Silas's gaze snapped to me fully then, flat and hard. "What he doesn't understand is why this continues. A scentless omega is a liability. You destabilize hierarchy, you confuse instincts. People can't place you, can't trust their own reactions around you. It's dangerous." There it was, the verdict I'd heard all my life. Spoken like fact, not insult. Except it still cut like both. I gave him my best smile. "Good morning to you too, Dr. Doom. How's the moral superiority still running hot?" His jaw flexed. "You think this is a joke? You're dead weight. The new alpha may not see it yet, but he will, and when he does, what do you think happens?" "Maybe he claps politely and thanks me for my service," I said. My humor had an edge, even to my own ears. "Maybe he realizes I keep the pack's inventory from collapsing like your bedside manner." Silas took a step closer, bristling. "Inventory doesn't win battles. Hierarchy does, and hierarchy's never seen a spreadsheet," I countered. "Enough," Emery snapped, surprising us both. His curls bounced as he glared between us. "You don't get to decide his worth, Silas. Neither of you do. Marlowe deserves the same chance as anyone." "A chance?" Silas scoffed. "He doesn't belong. You can paint a rock and call it a jewel, Emery, but it stays a rock. And you—" His eyes flicked toward me with a flicker of something darker. "Envy? Fury? You're dragging the alpha's attention where it doesn't belong." That hung in the air. Heavy. Too personal. "Ah," I said lightly, leaning back on the stool, folding my arms. "There it is. Not about me at all, is it? You're worried the alpha might notice the empty space where my scent should be. That he already has." Silas's nostrils flared. For one taut second, I thought he'd actually break his own rules and lunge. He didn't. He straightened, smoothing himself back into the shell of discipline. Mark me, Marlowe. This pack doesn't need your kind of difference. And I'll make sure Tarian sees that. He turned on his heel and left, bitterness lingering longer than his footsteps. Emery blew out a breath, running a hand through his hair, which only made the curls more chaotic. He's wrong, he said fiercely. You're not dangerous. You're... He hesitated, searching. You're proof we don't have to be ruled by instinct. I rubbed a hand over my face, exhausted by truths I hadn't asked for. Or proof that people hate what they can't categorize. Emery picked up the vial again, holding it out toward me. His voice dropped, soft, urgent. You don't have to take it now, just think about it. If you ever want to know what it feels like to be seen the way others are, this could be the key. The liquid shimmered between us, the promise of belonging in a bottle. My stomach twisted. My throat tightened. I didn't reach for it. Instead I said, quiet but firm, if I change just to fit their script, then they're right. And I refuse to give them that. Emery's expression cracked with disappointment, but beneath it lived stubborn admiration. You'll regret it, he whispered. Maybe, I said, forcing a crooked smile. But at least the regret will smell like me. And if the new alpha walked into the room right then, as he had yesterday, he would have smelled nothing at all. But he would have seen me, standing in the middle of Emery's chaos, owning every inch of absence. Rhea's house was built like a fortress that had disguised itself as a home. The walls were lined with shelves of strategy manuals and old ledgers. But just as many racks held blades and rifles polished to gleam. A fire crackled in the hearth, sending smoke curling into the rafters, tangling, with the sharp tang of her scent, iron and ash, protective and unyielding. I sank into one of her rigid wooden chairs, feeling like a trespasser in someone's bunker. Rhea prowled across the room with the kind of purposeful energy that made even furniture straighten up. Her hair was pulled into a severe knot, and her jaw worked like she was chewing the edges off a reprimand. You're courting death, she said finally, voice low and precise. In front of the pack, in front of him. Do you think an alpha lets insolence go unpunished? I leaned back, balancing the chair on two legs, pretending I wasn't a little rattled. I said no, not insolence. Just choice. Choice, she repeated, as if the word tasted foreign. She turned on me, steel in her gaze. You think your freedom is worth gambling with his temper? He could end you, Marlowe. Do you understand that? Sure. I set the chair back down with a thump. But if every day is already a cage, what's the difference between living and ending? The air cracked between us. Rhea's hand flexed near her hip, where a knife usually rested. Tonight it wasn't there, but her instinct filled the space anyway. Don't you dare say that. You think I carried you through every trial, every sideways look, every whisper of broken Omega, just so you could throw yourself under his boot? My throat tightened. I wanted to laugh it off, but the words came out jagged. You didn't carry me, Rhea, you caged me. Every warning, every lecture, every wall you've built around me, it's suffocating. Her lips parted, and for once, the fierce retort didn't come. Instead, her shoulders dipped, like iron softening under too much heat. I'm trying to keep you alive, she said quietly. I can't lose you. Not you. I blinked. That rawness, she almost never let it out. I felt the sting behind my eyes and shoved it down, because if I broke, she'd build another wall to keep the pieces safe. You don't keep someone alive by wrapping them in barbed wire, I muttered. You just keep them from ever moving. She closed the distance between us, kneeling so her sharp eyes met mine. The fire painted her skin gold and shadow. You're my brother, she said, each word like hammered steel. I will fight gods for you. But don't make me fight you too. My chest ached. I wanted to reach out. I wanted to tell her I understood. But the weight of years pressed on me. The years of being hidden behind her strength, surviving but not living. I'm tired, Rhea, I whispered. Tired of being the fragile thing you hide. Tired of living under your protection like I don't get to have my own teeth. Her fingers tightened on the arm of my chair until wood creaked. You're not fragile, she said fiercely. You're Precious. The word hit me harder than any insult. I almost laughed, but the sound caught halfway to tears. Precious is just another word for breakable. She looked at me like she wanted to argue, to shake me, to weld me into armor with her bare hands. But instead she let out a long breath, turning her gaze to the fire. For a moment, she wasn't the general or the wall. She was just my sister, afraid. "You're all I have left," she said, voice low. "Don't make me watch you fall." I stood, pressing a kiss to her hair before she could swat me away for being sentimental. "Then maybe," I murmured. "Stop building walls so high I can't see the sky." Her silence followed me out the door. Heavy, aching, but somewhere deep down, maybe just a little cracked. The weapons storage smelled like oil and cold iron, the kind of scent that sank into your clothes and followed you home. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting long shadows across racks of rifles and crates stenciled with serial numbers. My pen scratched against a clipboard as I ticked boxes, cataloging ammunition like I was counting rosary beads. Numbers didn't judge. Numbers didn't whisper defective. The door clicked open behind me. I didn't need to turn. The air shifted in that particular way it does when gravity walks into the room. "Omega," Tarian said. I finished the line I was writing before I glanced up. "Alpha. Should I salute, or are we keeping things casual?" He stepped closer, slow and measured, the sound of boots against concrete. His eyes were winter again, clear, sharp, and dangerous if you stayed too long exposed. "You disobeyed." "I declined," I corrected, leaning against a crate. Subtle but important difference. His brow ticked, the faintest crack in marble. Then he inhaled. The weight of pheromones dropped into the room like a storm front. It pressed against the walls, sank through the air, demanding submission the way thunder demands silence. My chest tightened, not because of instinct, but because I knew how everyone else would have folded by now. I blinked at him. "Huh." His nostrils flared. He turned up the pressure. Another push, a darker note of command, woven into the invisible current. The kind that makes Omegas tremble and Alphas bare teeth. I straightened, brushing my hands off on my jeans. "You sound like a narrator for National Geographic," I said. "Next you'll tell me I'm watching the majestic alpha in his natural habitat, exerting dominance over unsuspecting prey." A pause. Then, to my astonishment, the corner of his mouth twitched. Just a flicker, like his composure had slipped on a patch of ice. "You feel nothing?" he asked. "Oh, I feel plenty," I said, tapping my temple. "Just not the way you want me to. My body doesn't do the whole pheromone theater." "Sorry to disappoint." "You should be afraid," he said, voice low. "Why?" I tilted my head. "Because you're bigger, stronger, louder. Everyone already knows that. You pressing me into the floor with invisible cologne doesn't change the math." His eyes narrowed, studying me the way a swordsman studies an unfamiliar blade. "Then, why did you say no?" My heart kicked faster. Humor only went so far, and being this close to him was like standing on the edge of a cliff, pretending you weren't dizzy from the drop. Still, I made myself smile. "Because I have the luxury of choice, and a no means more when you're allowed to say yes." His gaze sharpened, the kind of look that tries to peel skin off bone. "You think you're free because you can't be scented." "I know I'm free," I said, quieter. "Because I don't owe my reactions to anyone's biology. Everything I give is mine to give." For the first time since I'd met him, he looked unsettled, not angry, not cold, unsettled, as if I'd opened a door he didn't realize was locked until just now. "You're either the bravest Omega I've ever met," he said slowly, "or the most foolish. Why not both?" I shrugged. "I like efficiency." The air pressure eased. The storm receded. He stepped back, not retreating, just creating space, like he wasn't sure what might happen if he stayed too close. "You interest me, Marlowe Vins," he said finally. I raised an eyebrow. That sounds dangerously close to a compliment. "Careful. People might start talking." This time the almost smile was unmistakable. He turned toward the door, his voice leaving the faint chill of winter behind him. "We'll speak again." And then he was gone, leaving me alone with the crates, my racing pulse, and the realization that, for the first time in my life, an alpha had looked at me and seen something more than broken. The lab at night was quieter, but not calmer. The hum of the refrigeration units blended with the faint hiss of a burner, and the smell, always the smell, was thicker in the dark. Sweetness from spilled sugar compounds, spice from powdered ginger, the faint metallic tang of failed trials. It was like standing inside a kitchen where chemistry had gone to war. Emery leaned over the central bench, curls falling into his eyes, illuminated by the weak glow of a desk lamp. His safety goggles perched crooked on his forehead. He looked like a student cramming for finals, except instead of flashcards he had racks of glass vials filled with liquid that shimmered faintly under the light. When he saw me, his face lit up. "You came?" "Your note said urgent," I said, stepping inside. I half expected the place to be on fire. "It's better than fire." He held up a small vial, liquid swirling pink gold like sunlight trapped in glass. "It's you." I frowned. "I'm fairly certain I'm standing right here." No. Emery's words tripped over each other in their rush. This is resonance. A synthetic scent signature, mapped to your DNA. If you drink it, your body will metabolize the compounds and project a true pheromone profile. Yours. The one you should have had. The vial caught the light as he turned it, throwing strange colors onto his cheek. My throat tightened. "Emery. Don't you see?" He pressed. "This is freedom. You'd never have to hear the word broken again. Alphas would recognize you. Omegas would understand you. No more uncertainty. No more." He broke off, his eyes shining. "You could finally belong." The word hit like a stone dropped in a still pond. Belong. I reached for the vial before I realized what I was doing. The glass was warm against my palm, trembling faintly. No, that was my hand. Inside, the liquid shimmered, promise and poison all at once. What if he was right? What if this was the missing piece? If I drank it, maybe I'd feel what everyone else felt. The pull, the connection, the certainty of being seen. Maybe Tarian's gaze would finally soften, not out of curiosity, but recognition. For one dangerous heartbeat, I wanted it. Emery's voice dropped, soft and pleading. "You've been waiting for this your whole life. Just one swallow, Marlowe, and everything changes." I stared at the vial, then at Emery, his earnest face so full of belief it almost hurt, and I set it back down on the table. His smile faltered. "Why?" "Because if I drink this," I said slowly, "and people finally want me, it won't be me they're wanting, it'll be a formula, a trick." "It wouldn't be a trick," he argued desperately. "It would be you, the real you." "No." I shook my head. "The real me is the one standing here. Scentless, inconvenient, impossible to categorize. If someone wants me, it has to be in spite of that, or it doesn't mean anything." The silence that followed was sharp. Emery's hands curled into fists at his sides. "You're so stubborn." His voice cracked, halfway between admiration and anger. "You'd rather suffer than let me help you." "I'd rather suffer as myself than live as someone else," I said. The words scraped my throat, but they felt true. His eyes shone too bright, and he turned back to his workbench, shoulders tense. "Fine, don't take it. But I'll finish the formula anyway. Someone has to prove it's possible." "Emery." He cut me off, voice brittle. "Go." "Before I say something I don't mean." I hesitated, then stepped back, the chemical air prickling at my skin. At the door, I looked back. Emery was hunched over the vial, his face lit by its glow, stubborn hope burning brighter than disappointment. I walked out carrying nothing, but the temptation stayed heavy in my chest, because for just 1 second, I'd wanted it more than anything. The storage room was half lit, the kind of light that made shadows stretch longer than they should. Metal shelves loomed in rows, stacked with crates of ammunition, and sealed boxes marked with stencils I knew by heart. The air smelled like oil and cold brass. I came here to think sometimes. Numbers and inventory were simpler than people. The door clicked shut behind me. I didn't need to turn around. My spine already knew who it was. The shift in the air was unmistakable, heavier, colder, like a storm cloud had slipped inside the room. "Tarian," I said without looking up from the clipboard in my hands. "If you're here to check my math, I'll warn you. I bite when cornered." His boots whispered over concrete, deliberate and steady. "You avoid me. I'm here cataloging." I tapped the page. "It's not exactly a romantic hideout." "You avoid me," he repeated, closer now. His voice carried weight, not volume, the kind of gravity you couldn't shrug off. I set the clipboard down slowly, finally meeting his eyes. "Maybe I do." "You're a lot." Something flickered there. Something not quite annoyance and not quite curiosity. "What does your no mean, Marlowe?" The question came out sharp as a blade. I swallowed. My pulse was already sprinting, but I made my tone easy. "It means no. Not now. Not like that." His jaw flexed. "And your yes?" The room was too small. Or maybe he was too close. I could hear his breathing, steady and controlled, while mine betrayed me with its uneven edges. "Yes means I want it. Not because biology says I should. Not because your voice drips power and the room bows. Because I decide it." His gaze pinned me, sharp as winter air. "No one speaks to me like this." Maybe they should. I leaned against the crate behind me, trying for casual, and landing somewhere nearer desperate. My chest felt too tight. "You're used to people reacting on instinct, kneeling before they think. I don't have that luxury. Or maybe I do. Depends on your point of view." He moved closer. Not threatening, not exactly, but the kind of proximity that rewrote the air. The kind that made every nerve ending scream for attention. "And what point of view is yours?" "That being scentless isn't a curse," I said, my voice rough. "It's freedom. If I say no, it's mine. If I say yes, it's mine. That's all I have. That's everything." His eyes searched mine, slow and deliberate, like he was reading a language no one had ever taught him. "You think your difference makes you strong." I laughed once, low and unsteady. "No, my difference makes me honest. Strength is just a rumor." He was standing right in front of me now, so close that if I moved even slightly, our shoulders would brush. The scent that should have hit me, the power, the dominance, the pull, wasn't there. Only silence. Only him. It made me dizzy. Tarian exhaled, slow and measured, like he was testing what silence tasted like too. "You unsettle me, Marlowe Vins." "Good," I said, though my voice cracked just enough to betray the quake in my chest. "Maybe you need unsettling." The shadow of something dangerous curved at his mouth. Not anger, not humor. Something between. He leaned in just enough that I could feel the warmth of his breath, against my cheek, close enough that the world went tunnel vision. "I don't want obedience from you," he said, each word deliberate. Not forced, not stolen, not faked. My hand curled into a fist against the crate, nails digging into my palm. "Then what do you want?" His answer came low, almost a growl, but steady as stone. "I want your yes. But only if it's real." The silence that followed roared louder than any shout. My heart pounded so hard I thought he might hear it. And then, just as suddenly as he'd closed the distance, he stepped back, leaving the air too empty, too cold. His gaze lingered one beat longer, then he turned toward the door. "We'll speak again," he said, voice softer now. "When you're ready to mean it." The door shut behind him, and I was left gripping the edge of the crate, trying to remember how to breathe. Because no one had ever wanted my yes before. Not like that. The medical block always smelled too clean, the sharp sting of antiseptic layered over bitter herbs. It wasn't comforting, it was sterile, suffocating, like breathing through gauze. I never liked being here. Tonight, I liked it even less. Every head turned when I walked in. The hush was immediate, thick with accusation. On the central table lay a set of papers, inventory sheets, vials counted and recounted, red pen slashes that looked like wounds. 30 units missing, someone muttered. From restricted stock, another added. The words spread like smoke until they reached me. Silas stood at the far end of the room, posture precise, uniform immaculate, holding the clipboard like a verdict. His eyes, cool and cutting, landed on me. Marlowe. I arched a brow, feigning calm even as unease twisted in my gut. Good evening, Dr. Doom. What crisis have I been volunteered for this time? He didn't smile. He never smiled at me. Restricted medication has gone missing. According to these records. He held up the papers. You signed off on their release. My chest went tight. I did not. The council members of the pack were there too, betas in neat clothes. Omegas hovering at the edges, 2 alphas standing like sentinels. All watching, waiting, judging. Silas laid the sheet flat, sliding it across the table for everyone to see. My signature. Perfect, down to the tilt of the 5 in Vins. Except, it wasn't mine. Rhea was there, standing in the corner like iron forced into human shape. Her jaw was locked, her fists curled. This is ridiculous, I said, forcing my voice steady. That's a forgery. Silas tilted his head, expression clinical. Strange. The ink matches the day's log. The dates line up. The missing units correspond to your shift. Murmurs rippled through the room. Doubt smells worse than antiseptic. Enough, a voice cut through. Low, commanding. Tarian. He strode into the center like gravity personified, his gaze sweeping the room until everyone fell silent. He didn't look at Silas first. He looked at me. Marlowe. His voice carried weight, but not accusation. Did you sign for the medication? No. The word came fast, clipped, absolute. You're certain? Yes. The council stirred uneasily. One beta advisor cleared his throat. Sir, with respect, how can we rely on the word of a scentless Omega in a matter this critical? His condition already destabilizes. Quiet, Tarian said. The single word flattened the air. The advisor shut his mouth pale. But Tarian didn't let me go. His gaze held, cold as iron. I defend your word, Marlowe, but I require honesty. If you've hidden something, if there's a reason, tell me now. Something inside me cracked. Weeks, months, years of being weighed and measured, judged by absence instead of presence. Always defective, always risk, always the one to explain, to excuse, to prove. I slammed my hand against the table, hard enough that vials rattled in their trays. I'm tired of this. My voice rang too loud in the sterile room, sharp and ragged. I'm tired of being seen only as a problem, as if every shadow is mine, as if every mistake has my name written on it because I don't smell the way you want me to. The silence after that was brittle. Every face turned toward me, some shocked, some pitying, some calculating. Rhea stepped forward, ready to tear the world apart for me. But I held up a hand. Don't. Not this time. My pulse hammered in my ears, my throat raw. I didn't take those drugs. I didn't sign those papers. If you want to keep calling me broken, useless, defective, fine. But I won't carry the weight of crimes I didn't commit just because I'm easier to blame. For a long, terrible moment, no one spoke. Then Tarian moved. He didn't shout. He didn't growl. He simply placed himself at my side, his presence filling the space like stone in a riverbed. He looked at Silas and the air sharpened. You bring me forged papers and call it proof? Silas stiffened. I bring you evidence. The pack deserves stability. He undermines it. No, Tarian said, voice quiet but final. What undermines stability is falsehood. His gaze swept the council. Until we know the truth, no accusation stands. This matter is closed. Closed. Just like that. But the eyes on me didn't soften. They still weighed, still doubted. I drew a breath that scraped like glass down my throat. My hands shook, but I curled them into fists until they steadied. Thank you, Alpha, I said. Not because I meant it, but because anything else would have broken me wide open in front of them all. Tarian's glance flicked toward me, unreadable. For 1 second I thought I saw something. Not pity, not suspicion. Something stranger. Recognition. And I realized with a sick twist in my gut, that recognition might be more terrifying than doubt. The council chamber was heavy with silence, the kind that makes every scrape of a chair sound like thunder. I stood near the back, arms folded tight, trying to look steadier than the pulse thrumming in my neck. The accusation from last night still lingered in the air, sour and sharp. Every glance I caught said the same thing: guilty until proven otherwise. The door banged open. Emery stumbled in, curls wild, goggles hanging around his neck, clutching a folder thick with papers. His cheeks were flushed, his eyes bright with the kind of manic certainty that meant he'd found something. "I have proof," he said breathlessly, slapping the folder onto the long table. Pages spilled out, covered in neat columns of numbers and chemical-smudged fingerprints. I cross-checked the logs against the distribution database and the scanner timestamps. The handwriting was copied, yes, but the entry was digitally altered afterward. "Look here." He jabbed at the pages. "The terminal signature doesn't match Marlowe's ID. It matches Silas's." Gasps rippled through the room. All eyes swung toward the medic. Silas stood ramrod straight, his uniform immaculate as ever, but his face was pale. "This is absurd." "Is it?" Emery demanded, fire in his voice. "Because the evidence is clear. You forged the papers. You tried to frame him." The room crackled with tension. Tarian hadn't moved yet. He stood at the head of the table, arms folded, expression carved from stone. Only his eyes shifted, cold and sharp as a blade, fixing on Silas. "Explain," the Alpha said. Silas's mouth worked. For a moment, I thought he'd deny it, call Emery's data flawed. But then something broke in his face. Anger, desperation, something raw and ugly clawing its way out. "Why him?" Silas burst out, voice shaking. "Why do you look at him like that? He's nothing. He doesn't even scent. He's a void, an error. He stopped himself, chest heaving. His eyes burned at Tarian. "Not me. You're supposed to see me. I've been loyal, disciplined, useful. I've stood at your side since the beginning, and you waste your attention on him." The words hung in the air, blistering, undeniable. Tarian didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His calm was colder than rage. "You lied to the council. You endangered the pack, and you let jealousy make you weak." Silas flinched, as if struck. "You will step down," Tarian continued. "Effective immediately. You hold no position of trust here. Leave this room." The silence that followed was suffocating. Silas's face crumpled, fury twisting into something broken, but he obeyed. He turned sharply and stalked out, the door echoing shut behind him. For the first time in days, I could breathe. Rhea moved then. She strode forward, planting herself at my side with the kind of certainty that made the room pay attention. Her scent, iron and smoke, cut through the air as she lifted her chin. "He is not broken," she said, her voice ringing against the walls. "He is my brother. And he is alive. That is enough." Something inside me cracked open at her words, hot and aching. For once, she wasn't building walls. She was tearing one down. I swallowed hard, fighting the sting in my eyes, and when I glanced at Tarian, I found him watching me, not with cold calculation this time, but with something steadier. As if, in that moment, the absence of my scent wasn't absence at all. For the first time, the weight on my chest eased. Justice, however messy, had found its way through. And I wasn't standing alone anymore. My room wasn't much to look at, just 4 walls, a narrow bed, a desk stacked with more papers than sense, and a lamp that threw soft amber light over everything. It smelled like old ink and clean linen. No one ever lingered here long, because there was nothing to linger for. No scent that marked the space as mine, no invisible claim of belonging, just quiet. That's why the knock startled me. When I opened the door, Tarian filled the frame. He didn't look like a storm this time. No iron edges, no calculated frost. Just a man standing too tall for my doorway, shoulders broad enough to block out the hall light. "May I come in?" he asked. I almost laughed, because when does an alpha ask? But I stepped aside. "Sure, just don't trip on the clutter. It's organized chaos." He moved into the room, eyes sweeping over the plain space like he was cataloging it. When he turned back to me, something had shifted in his expression. Less winter, more weight I couldn't name. I wanted to speak with you, he said. That's becoming a habit, I replied lightly, though my chest was tight. He studied me for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached out, his hand stopping inches from mine. May I? The words froze me. Not a command, not a demand, a question. I nodded before I could think better of it. His fingers brushed mine, tentative, warm. The contact was so small, but it burned like recognition in a language I'd never learned. He stepped closer, the space between us dissolving. Again, his hand lifted, hesitating near my shoulder this time. His gaze searched mine. May I? Yes, I whispered. His palm settled gently, grounding, not pressing. Just there. His thumb brushed once against fabric, and the simple kindness of it knocked the air from my lungs. We stood in silence, our breathing louder than the ticking of the old clock on the wall. He leaned closer, pausing when his forehead hovered near mine. May I? My throat was dry. Yes. Our foreheads touched, soft, steady. I closed my eyes against the rush of heat rising in my chest. No pheromones, no instinctual pull. Just choice. Just this. His voice was low, almost reverent. You unsettle me. Good, I said, though it trembled out of me. Maybe I'm supposed to... When he kissed me, it wasn't a claim. It was a question asked in the shape of lips brushing against mine, light enough to retreat if I turned away. I didn't. The second kiss was firmer, still measured, like he was memorizing me one heartbeat at a time. His hands cupped my face carefully, like he was holding something breakable. I let out a shaky laugh between breaths. You know, you're the first alpha who's ever asked, and you're the first omega who's ever told me no, he murmured. I smiled against his mouth. Balance then. His thumb stroked my jaw, and he pulled back just enough to look me in the eye. The depth there almost undid me, not hunger, not instinct, but something clearer. I didn't realize I'd spoken until the words left me, raw and unsteady. Finally. Not because of pheromones. The way he exhaled at that, the way his gaze softened, I almost believed I'd said something holy. We didn't rush. Every touch came with permission. Every movement a quiet yes, or a quiet pause. By the time I lay back against the narrow bed, the world outside the four walls had shrunk to nothing, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't being wanted for what nature dictated. I was wanted for me. The hall looked the same as the day Tarian first walked in, high windows spilling light, wooden, beams humming with the weight of tradition, the air thick with the layered chorus of pheromones. But today, the room didn't feel like stained glass. It felt like tinder, waiting for a spark. The council sat in rows, backs rigid, expressions carved from old stone. Alphas radiated cedar and steel. Betas filled the air with order, sharp and herb-like. Omegas scented the room with honey and warmth. And me? Still nothing. Still absence. But for once, I didn't feel small because of it. Tarian stood at the center, a presence that silenced the room without effort. He looked every inch the alpha they'd expected him to be, controlled, exacting, dangerous. Until he spoke. I've chosen my bond, he said, voice carrying without rising. Not by scent, not by instinct, by choice. The silence broke like glass dropped from a height. Gasps. Whispers. A stunned laugh from somewhere in the back. One of the elder alphas leaned forward, disbelief etched across his face. Impossible. No alpha forms a bond without resonance. Tarian's eye swept the room, cold and unyielding. Then I am the first. And then he turned. To me. Every gaze followed, the weight of the pack pressing down. My chest tightened. But I lifted my chin. If they wanted a spectacle, I'd give them one. This Omega, Tarian continued, does not scent. He cannot be read by instinct. And yet, I choose him, not because nature compels me, not because tradition demands it. Because he is mine, because I want him. The murmurs surged, outrage mixing with awe. Some faces twisted in fury, centuries of rules breaking in front of them. Others lit up with something gentler, fragile but fierce, hope. I caught Emery's wide eyes near the edge of the crowd. He looked like he might combust, curls shaking with the force of his excitement. If choice can be a bond, he breathed, almost reverent, then choice can be a formula too. I'll find it. I swear I will. Across the hall, Rhea stepped forward. My sister, who'd spent years building walls around me, who'd carried me in iron arms I'd mistaken for chains. She stopped at my side and looked straight at me, not at the absence of my scent, not at the space where tradition said I should fit. At me. And she smiled. A real smile, one that cracked her armor wide open. Now I believe you're free. My throat burned. I wanted to say something back, but the words tangled behind my teeth. So I just nodded, because sometimes freedom is heavier than chains, and sometimes you can't speak under its weight. Tarian held out his hand. No command, just an invitation. I took it. The uproar around us swelled, but I hardly heard it. His fingers closed around mine, warm and steady, grounding me in the middle of a storm we'd started together. For the first time, I didn't care what the pack smelled or didn't smell. My yes was mine. His yes was his. And that was enough. The council would adapt, or they wouldn't. But the cracks were already spreading. I could see it in the Omegas who exchanged quick, startled glances, in the Betas whose shoulders eased just slightly, in the young Alphas who looked at me not with scorn but with questions. Change had a scent too, maybe, even if I couldn't smell it. When the meeting broke apart in chaos, arguments, protests, fervent whispers, I stayed close to Tarian. He guided me out with one hand at my back, steady, sure. Once the doors closed behind us, the noise faded into muffled thunder. I let out a shaky laugh, adrenaline sparking in my veins. You just threw a torch into a powder keg. Good, he said calmly. It needed fire. We walked in silence down the corridor, the marble echoing under our steps. My pulse hadn't slowed, but it was different now. Less panic, more exhilaration. At my door he paused, watching me with that same unnerving patience. You're certain? I smiled crookedly. About you? No. About me? Yes. Something softened in his face then, just for a heartbeat. He brushed his thumb across my knuckles. That's enough. I tugged him closer, just enough that our shoulders touched, and murmured, You know this means you're obligated now. His brow arched. Obligated? Yeah. I grinned. To say please. Even when you want coffee. For the first time he laughed. Low, quiet, but real. Then I suppose I'll start practicing. And in that moment, in the quiet after the storm, I realized something that settled deep in my chest. I hadn't been broken after all. Just waiting for a kind of bond no one else had imagined yet.